In the shadowed halls of Blackthorn Manor, where secrets fester and lies weave a deadly web, a single question burns: who is tearing this grand estate apart? Enter Hercule Poirot, the master detective whose razor-sharp mind unravels deception. With every glance, a missing servant, a mysterious stranger, a stolen brooch, a forged document. Each clue points to a cunning puppet master manipulating the guests. Why does young Clara hide her midnight rendezvous? What drives Felix to pen a scandalous letter? How deep do Lord Worthington's financial lies run? And who is the cloaked figure lurking in the orchard? In 30 seconds, step into a world of suspense where every word, every silence betrays the truth. Follow Poirot as he exposes a cascade of life's romantic secrets, blackmail, fraud, and betrayals culminating in a shocking revelation that restores Blackthorn's harmony. Can you spot the liar before Poirot does? Chapter 1. The arrival at Blackthorn Manor. The autumn wind howled across the rolling hills of Devon, carrying with it the sharp scent of damp earth and fading leaves. Hercule Poirot, bundled in a tailored overcoat, adjusted his hat as the carriage rattled along the winding path to Blackthorn Manor. The invitation from Lady Eleanor Worthington had been cryptic, penned in elegant script yet tinged with urgency. A matter of utmost delicacy requires your singular talents, Monsieur Poirot. Lies fester among my guests, threatening to unravel all I hold dear. Poirot's moustache twitched as he reread the note, his grey cells already stirring. Lies, he mused, were like cracks in a fine vase, small at first, but left unchecked. They shattered everything. The carriage lurched to a stop before the manor, a sprawling edifice of grey stone cloaked in ivy, its windows glowing like watchful eyes against the dusk. A footman, stiff in livery, opened the door, and Poirot stepped onto the gravel drive, his polished shoes crunching softly. The air was heavy with the promise of rain, and the distant caw of a rook echoed from the woods. Lady Eleanor awaited him at the entrance, her silver hair pinned impeccably, her eyes sharp despite the lines of worry etched around them. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, extending a gloved hand, "your presence brings me hope. This house is a nest of vipers, and I fear their venom spreads." Poirot bowed, his eyes scanning her posturette, yet her fingers trembled slightly. "Madame, Hercule Poirot is at your service. But pray, tell me, what is the nature of these lies?" Lady Eleanor led him into the grand foyer, where a chandelier cast flickering light across marble floors and portraits of stern-faced ancestors. "My guests," she said, lowering her voice, "are a mix of family and friends, gathered for a week of celebration. Yet someone among them sows discord rumors, half-truths, accusations. I cannot pinpoint the source, but the harmony of Blackthorn is at stake." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. "And who, madame, resides in this nest?" She gestured toward the drawing-room, where voices spilled through the heavy oak doors. "My husband, Lord Worthington, a man of business, but lately distracted. My niece, Clara Beaumont, charming but secretive. Dr. Hargrove, a physician of repute, though his confidence borders on arrogance. Mrs. Langley, our housekeeper, who knows more than she says. Mr. Felix Thornton, a young artist with debts and dreams, and Mr. Reginald, a distant cousin, quiet but observant. Others, too, but these are the principal players." Poirot's eyes gleamed, a fine cast for a drama of deception. "I shall observe them at dinner, madame, for it is in the breaking of bread that truths and lies reveal themselves." The dining room was a spectacle of opulence. A long mahogany table gleamed under candlelight. Silverware sparkled, and crystal goblets caught the glow of a roaring fire. Poirot took his seat, his small frame dwarfed by the high-backed chair. Yet his presence commanded attention. The guests filtered in, their laughter and chatter a polished veneer over an undercurrent of tension. Poirot's eyes darted from one to another, noting every gesture, every glance. Lord Worthington, a broad man with a florid complexion, sat at the head, his fingers drumming on the tablecloth. His laugh was too loud, his smile too quick to fade. Clara Beaumont, a vision in emerald silk, toyed with her necklace, her eyes flitting to the door as if expecting someone. Dr. Hargrove, lean and hawkish, spoke in clipped tones about medical advancements, his gaze lingering on Lady Eleanor. Mrs. Langley, severe in black, moved silently, directing the servants with a glance. Felix Thornton, dishevelled yet charming, sketched idly on a napkin, his eyes darting to Clara. Mr. Reginald, a shadow in grey, said little, his thin lips pressed into a line. As the first course volute of mushroom was served, Poirot initiated conversation, his voice light but probing. Monsieur Felix, I hear you are an artist. What inspires your work in such a grand setting as Blackthorn? Felix grinned, his teeth flashing. Oh, the manners, shadows and secrets, Monsieur Poirot. Every corner hides a story, don't you think? Indeed, Poirot replied, noting Felix's quick glance at Clara. And Mademoiselle Clara, have you explored these corners recently? Clara's spoon paused mid-air, a flicker of unease crossing her delicate features. I keep to the gardens, mostly. The roses are lovely. This time of year, Poirot's moustache twitched. The gardens he knew from Lady Eleanor were locked at dusk, yet Clara's dress bore a faint smudge of earth on its hem. A small lie, perhaps, but a lie nonetheless. He filed it away, turning to Lord Worthington. And you, monsieur, do the affairs of business keep you from these gardens? Lord Worthington coughed, his fingers tightening on his glass. Business, yes, always pressing, haven't time for flowers. His foot tapped beneath the table, a rhythm Poirot noted as inconsistent with his casual tone. The conversation flowed, but Poirot's mind was a whirl of observations. Dr. Hargrove's anecdotes were too polished, as if rehearsed. Mrs. Langley's silence was not deference, but calculation, her eyes tracking every guest. Mr. Reginald's stillness was unnatural, his fork held with precision, as if he feared any movement might betray him. Poirot's first principle crystallized in his mind. Liars betray themselves through inconsistency in their gestures. A steady hand could mask a racing heart, but not forever. As the main course roast pheasant with truffle sauce arrived, Lady Eleanor leaned toward Poirot. Have you seen anything amiss, monsieur? Poirot sipped his wine, his eyes never leaving the table. Madame, the little grey cells, they are awake. Already I detect a thread of falsehood, though it is but a single strand in a larger tapestry. The meal progressed, and Poirot steered the conversation to the previous evening, when, according to Lady Eleanor, a rumour had spread that Clara had been seen in the village, though she claimed to have been in her room. Mademoiselle Clara, Poirot said, his tone gentle, you retired early last night, Nan. The quiet of the manor must be soothing. Clara's smile faltered, her fingers brushing her necklace again. Yes, I was reading. Jane Austen, you? No, I find her comforting. And which of her novels, pray? Poirot asked, his eyes soft but piercing. Pride and Prejudice, Clara said quickly, then hesitated. No, sense and sensibility. I confuse them sometimes. Poirot nodded, but his mind seized the slip. Sense and sensibility was not on the library's shelves, as he had noted during his brief tour. Clara's lie was small, but its purpose intrigued him. Why conceal her whereabouts? He glanced at Felix, who was sketching a rose, his knuckles white around the pencil. A connection, perhaps. As dessert poached pears in spiced wine was served, Poirot decided to test his observations. He turned to the table at large, his voice carrying a playful lilt. Mise Amos, a game. Let us each share a small truth about last night. I, for one, was reading the excellent works of Monsieur Conan Doyle, and you, Mademoiselle Clara. Clara's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. As I said, reading in my room. Poirot's gaze shifted to Felix. And you, monsieur? Felix shrugged, his smile easy but his eyes guarded. Sketching by the fire in the library, nearly burned my sleeve, clumsy as I am. Poirot noted the library's fireplace had been cold all evening, as Mrs. Langley had complained of a draught. Another lie, and one linked to Clara's. The thread was tightening. The dinner concluded with coffee, the guests dispersing to the drawing-room for cards. Poirot lingered, approaching Clara as she adjusted her shawl by the fire. Mademoiselle, he said softly, the gardens are indeed lovely, but locked at night, are they not? Clara froze, her cheeks piling. I meant the conservatory. I misspoke. Poirot's smile was kind, but his eyes were relentless. The conservatory, too, is locked after dusk, as Madame Langley informed me. Perhaps you were elsewhere. A truth, mademoiselle, is a kinder burden than a lie. Clara's lips parted, then closed. She glanced at Felix, who was now across the room, laughing too loudly at a jest. I was meeting someone, she whispered, in the old stables. Please, monsieur, it's private. Poirot inclined his head. Your secret is safe, for now. But lies, mademoiselle, they multiply. Be cautious. As Clara hurried away, Poirot's mind raced. The old stables were disused. Far from the Manor's lights a perfect place for a clandestine meeting. But with whom, and why lie about it? The evening ended with Poirot retiring to his room, his notebook filled with observations. Clara's smudged hem, Felix's false alibi, Lord Worthington's restless hands, and the silent watchfulness of Mrs. Langley and Mr. Reginald. The first lie had been uncovered. A small victory that satisfied Lady Eleanor's immediate concern about Clara's whereabouts. Yet Poirot knew this was merely the opening act. The true deceiver, the one weaving discord through Blackthorn Manor, remained hidden. There lies a shadow yet to be illuminated. He closed his notebook, his moustache curling slightly. The little grey cells, he murmured, they have begun their dance. Chapter 2. The Mask of Politeness. The morning sun pierced the mist, shrouding Blackthorn Manor, casting long shadows across the Dukist lawns. Hercule Poirot stood at his window, his sharp eyes tracing the silhouette of the estate's ancient yew trees. The previous night's revelation, Clara Beaumont's clandestine meeting in the old stables, had been a satisfying unmasking of a small deception. But Poirot knew it was merely a thread in a larger web, the true source of the Manor's discord. The puppeteer of lies remained elusive. Today he would probe deeper. Armed with his second principle, liars overcompensate to deflect scrutiny in the breakfast room. The clink of porcelain and the murmur of polite conversation greeted him. The guests were gathered around a table laden with silver trays of kedgeree, kippers, and freshly baked scones. Lady Eleanor presided with a strained smile, her eyes darting to Poirot as he entered. Lord Worthington was engrossed in a newspaper, his knuckles white as he gripped the pages. Clara, pale but composed, buttered a scone with deliberate care. Dr. Hargrove expounded on the virtues of morning exercise, his voice carrying a touch too loud. Felix Thornton, his cravat slightly askew, sketched on a scrap of paper, avoiding Clara's gaze. Mr. Reginald sipped tea in silence, his face a mask of neutrality. Mrs. Langley, the housekeeper, hovered near the sideboard, her black dress absorbing the light. Poirot took his seat, accepting a cup of café au lait from a servant. "A fine morning, Mies Amis," he said, his voice bright but laced with intent. "The air of Blackthorn invigorates the mind, does it not?" "Quite," Dr. Hargrove replied, his smile broad but his eyes cold. "Nothing like a brisk walk to clear the head." Poirot noted the doctor's polished tone, the kind that filled silences rather than invited dialogue. He turned to Mrs. Langley, who was arranging a tray of jams with meticulous precision. "Madame Langley, you must know every secret of this house, Nan. The servants, they see all." Mrs. Langley's hands paused, her lips pursing. "I do my duty, Monsieur Poirot, and keep my counsel. The manner runs smoothly because I say little and see much." Her words were a fortress, each syllable measured, overly formal. Poirot's moustache twitched. Overcompensation, he thought. The housekeeper's deference was a shield, hiding something. He resolved to test it, but first, he needed a spark to ignite the morning's revelations. As the guests ate, Lady Eleanor broached a troubling topic. "Monsieur Poirot, last night's unease lingers. This morning, I found a note slipped under my door, claiming a valuable sapphire brooch my mother's was stolen from the library safe. The servants swear no one entered after hours." The table fell silent. Lord Worthington's newspaper rustled as he lowered it, his face reddening. "Preposterous. That safe is impenetrable." "Yet the brooch is gone," Lady Eleanor said, her voice trembling. "Someone here is not what they seem." Poirot's eyes gleamed. A theft was a perfect crucible for lies. "Madame, permit me to investigate. Let us gather in the library after breakfast, where the truth may reveal itself." The library was a cavern of oak shelves and leather-bound tomes, its air thick with the scent of aged paper. A portrait of a stern Worthington ancestor loomed above the fireplace, where embers glowed faintly. The safe, a squat iron box, sat behind a velvet curtain. Poirot examined it, noting no signs of tampering. The guests stood in a semicircle, there, faces a gallery of unease. "Monsieur Poirot," Lord Worthington blustered, "this is a waste of time. The brooch is likely misplaced." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone mild, "but let us explore. Madame Langley, you oversee the household. When was the safe last opened?" Mrs. Langley's hands clasped tightly before her. "Yesterday morning, Monsieur, when Lady Eleanor placed the brooch inside. I locked it myself and gave the key to her ladyship." Her voice was smooth, almost rehearsed, each word a brick in her wall of propriety. Poirot's principle echoed in his mind. Liars overcompensate. He turned to Lady Eleanor. "And you, madame, kept the key?" "Yes," she said, producing a small silver key from her reticule. "It never left my possession." Poirot nodded, then addressed the group. "Let us reconstruct the day. Who was in the library yesterday?" Felix raised a hand, his smile sheepish. I was sketching there in the afternoon. The light's perfect by the windows. Clara nodded. I was reading there too, before dinner. I saw no one near the safe. Dr. Hargrove cleared his throat. I passed through around tea time, looking for a medical journal. The room was empty. Mr. Reginald spoke softly, his first words of the morning. I was there briefly, after lunch, to borrow a book on botany. Lord Worthington shrugged. I don't bother with the library. Too many books, not enough action. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Each account was plausible, yet Mrs. Langley's silence during their responses was telling. She stood rigid, her gaze fixed on the floor. He decided to press her. Madame Langley, you are the eyes of Blackthorn. Did you see anyone linger near the safe yesterday? Her lips tightened, and she smoothed her apron a gesture to deliberate. No, monsieur. I was busy with the servants all day. The library was not my concern. And yet, Poirot said, his voice soft as silk, you mentioned cleaning the library yesterday evening, when we spoke before breakfast. A curious oversight, Nan. Mrs. Langley's eyes flicked up, a spark of alarm betraying her. I misspoke. I meant the drawing room. The room tensed. Clara's hand tightened on her shawl. Felix's pencil stilled, and Dr. Hargrove's smile faltered. Poirot stepped closer to the housekeeper. Madame, a lie is a heavy burden. The truth is lighter. Where were you when the brooch vanished? Mrs. Langley's composure cracked, her voice rising slightly. I am no thief, monsieur. I only know the safe was locked when I left the library. But you were there, Poirot pressed, and you saw something, perhaps. A guest, a shadow, a movement. She hesitated, then spoke, her words clipped. I saw Miss Clara leave the library late yesterday. After she said she was there, she seemed hurried. Clara gasped. That's not true. I was in my room by 7. Poirot held up a hand, silencing the room. Mademoiselle Clara, we shall return to you. Madame Langley, your duty is to the truth. What else did you see? Mrs. Langley's shoulders sagged, her formality crumbling. I found the brooch on the floor, near the safe, after Miss Clara left. I thought it had fallen, so I placed it in a drawer in the housekeeper's office, meaning to tell her. Ladyship today, I swear I meant no harm. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. You had it all along. Why not speak at once? I feared blame, Mrs. Langley admitted, her voice low. With all the whispers of theft, I thought I'd be accused. Poirot nodded, his expression softening. The truth, madame, is always the better path. Let us retrieve the brooch. In the housekeeper's office, a small room cluttered with ledgers and keys, Mrs. Langley opened a drawer and produced the sapphire brooch, its facets catching the light. Lady Eleanor clutched it, relief flooding her face. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. This could have torn us apart. The guests murmured, some with relief, others with suspicion. Poirot raised a hand. The brooch is found, a small victory. But Madame Langley's hesitation, her over-careful words, they hid a truth. This is the lesson. A liar cloaks their fear in politeness, but the cracks always show. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his mind racing. Mrs. Langley's lie was born of fear, not malice, but her mention of Clara's hurried exit intrigued him. Clara's denial was too quick, her eyes too wide, and Felix's silence during the confrontation had been unnatural, his sketch abandoned. The theft was resolved, a satisfying end to the morning's drama, But Poirot sensed a deeper current. Someone had planted the seeds of discord, and Mrs. Langley's slip had been but a symptom. The true deceiver was still at large, their lies more subtle, their motives darker. He returned to the breakfast room, where a single scone remained, its crumbs a reminder of the morning's tensions. "The little grey cells," he murmured, "they see beyond the mask." Chapter 3. The eyes that betrayed the afternoon sun-bathed Blackthorn Manors gardens in a golden haze, the roses and lavender swaying gently in the breeze. Hercule Poirot stood on the terrace, his polished shoes gleaming, his hands clasped behind his back. The resolution of the sapphire brooch mystery had restored a fragile calm to the household. But Poirot's grey cells buzzed with suspicion. Mrs. Langley's overly polite concealment had been unmasked. Yet the deeper source of the Manors, discord, a web of lies threatening Lady Eleanor's peace, remained hidden. Today, Poirot would focus on his third principle. The eyes reveal what the tongue conceals. The eyes, he knew, were the traitor of the soul, betraying truths that words sought to bury. The guests had gathered for a garden party, an event Lady Eleanor insisted upon to ease tensions. A long table draped in white linen stood beneath a marquee, laden with cucumber sandwiches, scones with clotted cream, and pitchers of elderflower cordial. A string quartet played softly, their notes mingling with the hum of bees. Poirot observed the scene, his sharp gaze flitting from face to face. Lord Worthington, in a linen suit, laughed too heartily at a guest's jest, his eyes darting to the house. Clara Beaumont, in a pale blue dress, fanned herself, her gaze flickering toward the woods. Dr. Hargrove, impeccable in tweed, held court with a group of minor guests, his eyes lingering on Lady Eleanor. Mrs. Langley, now subdued, served tea. With mechanical precision, Mr. Reginald, ever the shadow, stood apart, his eyes fixed on his pocket watch. Felix Thornton, the young artist, lounged against a tree, sketching the scene, his eyes darting to Clara with a frequency. Poirot noted Dot. As Poirot sipped his cordial, a new disturbance rippled through the party. Lady Eleanor approached, her face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, another shadow falls upon us. A scandalous letter has surfaced, found in the gazebo this morning. It accuses one of my guests of a grave indiscretion, liaison that could ruin reputations." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A letter, madame. May I see it?" She handed him a folded sheet, its paper cheap, but the handwriting florid. The letter claimed that a guest had been seen in a compromising embrace in the Manor's orchard the previous night, threatening to expose them unless a sum was paid. The signature was a cryptic flourish, untraceable. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A blackmail letter was a perfect stage for deception, and the eyes of the guilty would betray them. "Let us mingle, madame," Poirot said, "and observe. The author of this letter will reveal themselves, for the eyes cannot lie." The party continued, but a current of unease ran beneath the laughter. Poirot moved among the guests, his questions light but pointed. He approached Felix first, who was sketching a caricature of the quartet, his pencil strokes sharp. "Monsieur Felix, you capture the spirit of this gathering. Were you perhaps in the orchard last night, seeking inspiration under the stars?" Felix's pencil paused, his eyes snapping to Poirot's, then away. "The orchard? No, monsieur. I was in my room, wrestling with a canvas. Starlights, too fickle for sketching." His eyes, Poirot noted, were restless, darting to Clara, then to the ground, a liar's eyes, too quick to flee. Poirot smiled. "Of course, the muse, she is unpredictable." He moved to Clara, who stood by the rose beds, her fan moving rapidly. "Mademoiselle, the orchard must be lovely at night. Did you walk there, perhaps, after your reading?" Clara's eyes widened, then locked onto his unblinking steadiness. "No, Monsieur Poirot, I told you, I was in my room. I don't care for orchards." Her gaze was too intense, a conscious effort to appear truthful. Poirot's principle rang true. The eyes reveal. He nodded and turned to Dr. Hargrove, who was discussing botany with a guest. "Doctor, your knowledge is vast. Do the orchard's apples tempt you for an evening stroll?" Hargrove's eyes met Poirot's briefly, then slid to Lady Eleanor. "I'm no romantic, monsieur. I was reviewing patient notes last night. Orchards don't interest me." His glance was too casual, too practiced. Poirot filed it away, noting Mrs. Langley's steady gaze as she poured tea, and Mr. Reginald's eyes, which never left his watch, as if time itself were his alibi. Lord Worthington, meanwhile, avoided Poirot's gaze entirely, his eyes fixed on his glass. As the quartet struck up a waltz, Poirot decided to test his observations. He gathered the guests near the marquee, holding the letter aloft. "Mes amis, a poisoned pen seeks to wound us. This letter speaks of an orchard tryst. I propose a simple exercise. Look upon each other and tell me, where were you last night at 10 o'clock? The guests shifted uncomfortably. Lord Worthington spoke first, his eyes on his shoes. "In the billiard room, playing around with Reginald." Mr. Reginald nodded, his eyes meeting Poirot's briefly. "Indeed, a dull game, but I was there." Mrs. Langley, her gaze steady, said, "I was overseeing the kitchen clean-up. The servants can confirm." Dr. Hargrove's eyes flicked to Clara. "As I said, patient notes in my room." Clara's fan stilled, her eyes locking on to Poirot's with unnatural force. "My room, reading, as I told you." Felix, last to speak, grinned, his eyes darting to Clara, then away. "My canvas kept me up. Didn't leave my room." Poirot's smile was serene, but his mind raced. Felix's eyes betrayed him most clearly restless, avoiding, yet drawn to Clara. Clara's forced stare was equally telling. The others' gazes held secrets, but Felix's were the most transparent. Poirot decided to press him. "Monsieur Felix," he said, stepping closer, "your sketches are vivid. Perhaps you sketched in the orchard, Nan." The letter mentions Moe _script _ to light, and Felix's eyes betrayed him. "I wrote the letter," he blurted, his voice low. "I needed money to settle a debt. I thought a small threat would loosen purses." Poirot nodded, his expression grave. "A dangerous game, monsieur. The truth has caught you." The guests gasped, Clara's hand flying to her mouth. Lady Eleanor's face hardened. "Felix, how could you?" "I'm sorry," Felix muttered, his eyes downcast. "I meant no harm, only to scare someone into paying." Poirot raised a hand. "The letter is exposed, the scandal averted. Let this be a lesson. The eyes betray what the heart conceals." The party dispersed, the guests murmuring. Felix's confession resolved the letter's mystery, a satisfying conclusion that restored a fragile peace. Yet Poirot's grey cells churned. Felix's debt hinted at a larger force, someone. Conce's system, or group, perhaps manipulating Felix, urging him to write the letter. The quartet played on, a mournful tune, as the guests retreated to the manor. Poirot followed Lady Eleanor inside, where Felix awaited, his shoulders slumped. "Monsieur Thornton," Poirot said firmly, Your actions have consequences. I trust you will face them. Felix nodded, his eyes fixed on the ground. I understand. Monsieur, I'll make amends. The matter was settled, but Poirot sensed a deeper current. Felix's desperation suggested pressure, perhaps from another. The true mastermind of Blackthorn's lies remained at large, their eyes still hiding the truth. Chapter 4. The rhythm of lies. The twilight sky over Blackthorn Manor was streaked with crimson, casting an ethereal glow over the estate's manicured lawns. Hercule Poirot stood in the conservatory, surrounded by lush ferns and blooming orchids, their delicate petals trembling in the evening breeze. The resolution of Felix Thornton's blackmail letter had quelled the immediate storm among the guests, but Poirot's grey cells remained restless. Felix's confession, driven by desperate debts, hinted at a larger manipulation, a hidden hand orchestrating the manor's discord. Tonight, Poirot would apply his fourth principle. A liar's rhythm falters under pressure. The cadence of speech, he knew, could unravel truths as surely as a misplaced glance. The guests had gathered for a late-night poker game in the manor's oak-panelled smoking room, where cigar smoke curled lazily toward the coffered ceiling. A green baize table stood at the center, lit by a brass chandelier that cast flickering shadows. Lord Worthington, his cravat loosened, dealt cards with a flourish, his laughter loud but brittle. Clara Beaumont, her auburn curls pinned high, sipped sherry, her fingers tapping nervously. Dr. Hargrove, his tie impeccably knotted, watched the game with a hawkish intensity. Mrs. Langley, though not playing, lingered by the sideboard, polishing glasses with a cloth. Mr. Reginald sat in a corner, nursing a brandy, his eyes half closed but watchful. Felix, chastened from the day's events, played with forced nonchalance, his cards trembling slightly. Poirot declined to join the game, choosing instead a high-backed chair by the fireplace, where he could observe without being conspicuous. He sipped at his own, its herbal warmth soothing, and let his ears attune to the rhythm of the room, the clink of chips, the shuffle of cards, the ebb and flow of conversation. Lord Worthington's voice dominated, his anecdotes about London business, deals punctuated by awkward pauses, as if he feared saying too much. Poirot's principle stirred in his mind. A liar's speech betrayed them when pressed, its rhythm disrupted by the weight of untruth. As the game progressed, Lady Eleanor entered, her silk gown rustling. She carried a small leather ledger, her expression grave. Monsieur Poirot, she said, drawing him aside, another shadow falls. My husband's business dealings have come into question. A guest claims he misrepresented a recent investment, causing financial strain. I found this ledger in his study. It shows discrepancies. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he took the ledger, its pages marked with hurried scrolls. A financial deception, madame. This is most intriguing. Let us explore, but discreetly. He returned to the table, where Lord Worthington was boasting about a railway venture. A guaranteed return, he said, his voice booming, for those with the vision to invest. Poirot smiled, his tone light. Monsieur Worthington, your ventures sound formidable. Tell me, this railway, where does it run? Lord Worthington's smile faltered, his words slowing. Well, it's a northern line, you see, near Leeds, A promising route. The hesitation was subtle, a hiccup in his usual bluster. Poirot pressed gently. Leeds, you say? I have friends there. Which company oversees this venture? Worthington's fingers fumbled a card, his voice catching. The Northern Star Company. Fine firm, very reliable. Poirot noted the pause, the slight stammer, a disruption in rhythm. He turned to the others. "And you, Mies, Amos, have you heard of this Northern Star? Investments are the talk of the hour, Nan." Clara's voice was soft, almost too quick. "I don't follow business, monsieur. I leave that to men like my uncle." Dr. Hargrove leaned back, his tone smooth. "Sounds speculative. I prefer safer bets, like medical patents." Felix, dealing a new hand, laughed nervously. "I'd invest if I had a shilling to spare, but alas, my pockets are empty." Mr. Reginald, his voice low, added, "I've heard of no Northern Star. Railways are risky these days." Mrs. Langley, polishing a glass, remained silent, but her cloth moved faster, a telltale sign of unease. Poirot's grey cell's word, Lord Worthington's faltering speech was the key, but the others' responses hinted at complicity or knowledge. He decided to apply pressure. "Monsieur Worthington," Poirot said, leaning forward, "this Northern Star Company, when did you last meet its directors?" Worthington's face reddened, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Last month, in London. Very busy men, you know, hard to pin down. And their names?" Poirot asked, his voice velvet over steel. I don't recall exactly," Worthington stammered, his cards slipping. "A Mr. Grayson, perhaps? Or was it Greystone?" The room stilled, the players' eyes on Worthington. Poirot's principle held. A liar's rhythm falters. He opened the ledger, scanning the entries. "Monsieur, this ledger shows no Northern Star. Instead, there are payments to a non-existent firm, draining funds from Blackthorn's accounts." "A serious matter, Nan." Worthington's jaw tightened, his voice halting. "It's a misunderstanding, Poirot. I've been under pressure. The market's fickle. Pressure, monsieur." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Or deception? Speak plainly, for the truth is kinder." The room held its breath. Worthington's shoulders slumped, his voice barely audible. I exaggerated the railway's prospects. I needed investors too. Cover losses elsewhere. I didn't mean to harm anyone." Lady Eleanor gasped, clutching the ledger. "Edward, how could you?" "Our family's name." Poirot raised a hand. "Madame, the truth is revealed, and that is a start." "Monsieur Worthington, your candour saves further ruin." The guests murmured, some shocked, others unsurprised. Clara's fingers stilled on her glass. Felix's cards lay forgotten, and Dr. Hargrove's eyes narrowed, as if calculating. Mrs. Langley's polishing ceased, her face unreadable. Mr. Reginald sipped his brandy, his expression unchanged, but his knuckles white. The game resumed, but the air was heavy. Poirot stepped to the window, gazing at the darkened gardens. Lord Worthington's confession had resolved the financial deception, a satisfying end to the evening's drama. Yet the rhythm of the room, the hesitations, the silences suggested more. Someone had known of Worthington's lie, perhaps even encouraged it. The true orchestrator of Blackthorn's discord remained hidden. There lies a subtle melody beneath the manor's cacophony. Poirot closed the ledger, his moustache curling. "The little grey cells," he murmured, "they hear the faltering beat." Chapter 5. The contradictions of character of the morning mist clung to Blackthorn Manor's stone walls, veiling the estate in a ghostly shroud. Hercule Poirot stood in the rose garden, his breath visible in the crisp air, his gloved hands adjusting. His scarf, the unmasking of Lord Worthington's financial deception, had restored a semblance of trust to the household, but Poirot's grey cells hummed with suspicion. The lord's faltering rhythm had betrayed his lie. Yet the deeper source of the manners discorder, cunning manipulator, weaving a tapestry of deceit remained elusive. Today, Poirot would apply his fifth principle. A liar's mask slips when their character is tested. A person's true nature, he knew, could not be hidden when their facade was challenged. Inside, the guests gathered in the Manners Library for a morning discussion, a tradition Lady Eleanor insisted upon to foster unity. The room was a sanctuary of polished oak and leather-bound books, its tall windows admitting pale light. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting warmth across the faces of the assembled company. Lady Eleanor sat at the head of a long table, her hands folded tightly. Lord Worthington, subdued after his confession, leafed through a book, avoiding eyes. Clara Beaumont, in a lavender gown, traced the rim of her teacup, her expression distant. Dr. Hargrove, his posture rigid, spoke of philanthropy, his voice carrying a practiced warmth. Mrs. Langley bustled about, arranging papers, her movements brisk but her eyes guarded. Felix Thornton doodled on a notepad, his charm dimmed by his recent disgrace. Mr. Reginald, ever reserved, sat near the window, his gaze fixed on the mist outside. Poirot took a seat, his small frame commanding attention despite his quiet demeanour. He sipped his tisane, observing the interplay of personalities. Dr. Hargrove's altruism seemed too polished, a performance for an audience. Poirot's principle stirred. A liar's character, when pressed, would crack like brittle glass. He needed a catalyst to test this. As the discussion turned to local charities, a servant entered, his face pale. "My lady," he said, bowing to Lady Eleanor, "there's news from the village. A servant, young Tom, has gone missing. He was last seen here, in the library, yesterday afternoon." A murmur rippled through the room. Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. "Tom, he's a good lad, always reliable. This is troubling." Poirot's eyes gleamed. A missing servant was a new thread in the Manners' tangled web, a chance to probe the guests' characters. "Madame," he said, "permit me to investigate. A disappearance is no small matter, and the truth lies in the details. Who saw Tom last?" The guests exchanged glances. Clara spoke first, her voice soft. "I saw him dusting the shelves yesterday. Around 3, he seemed distracted." Felix nodded, his pencil tapping. "I noticed him too, carrying books. Didn't think much of it." Dr. Hargrove leaned forward, his tone earnest. "I spoke to him briefly about a cut on his hand, advised him to clean it. He was a fine boy, no trouble." Mrs. Langley's hands stilled on a stack of papers. "He was here when I checked the library at 4. Left soon after, I believe." Mr. Reginald's voice was low. "I saw him near the servants' stairs, heading out. He carried a satchel." "Lord." Worthington shrugged, his voice gruff. "Servants come and go. Probably ran off to the village." Poirot's gaze sharpened, lingering on Dr. Hargrove. The doctor's concern felt rehearsed, his words too perfectly compassionate. He decided to test the man's character. "Doctor, your care for a servant's wound is admirable. Did you perhaps see where Tom went after your advice?" Hargrove's smile was steady, but his fingers tightened on his cup. "No, monsieur. I returned to my work. I assumed he went to his duties." Poirot nodded, then turned to the group. "Let us consider Tom's character. A reliable lad, yet distracted, carrying a satchel. What might drive such a boy to vanish?" Clara's eyes flicked to the table. Perhaps he was unhappy. Servants have their troubles. Felix snorted, his tone bitter. Troubles. He had a roof and wages, more than some. Dr. Hargrove's voice rose, a touch sharp. The boy was healthy, not the sort to run. Perhaps he was frightened off. The word frightened hung in the air. Poirot seized it. Frightened, doctor, an interesting choice. What might frighten a boy in this manner? Hargrove's smile faltered, his tone defensive. I only meant the pressures of service. Young lads are impressionable. Poirot's principle echoed. A liar's mask slips. Hargrove's altruistic facade clashed with his callous word choice. Poirot pressed further. Doctor, you are a man of medicine, devoted to healing. Yet you suggest a boy might flee from mere pressure. Did you perhaps speak to Tom of something unsettling? Hargrove's eyes narrowed, his voice clipped. I told you I only advised him on his cut. Nothing more. The room tensed. Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. Monsieur Poirot, what are you implying? Only this, Madame Poirot said, rising. A man's character is his truth. Let us visit the servants' quarters. Tom's belongings may speak where he cannot. In the cramped servants' quarters, Poirot examined Tom's room, a narrow cot, a wooden chest, and a single window, overlooking the stables. The chest held clothes and a few coins, but no satchel. A scrap of paper, tucked under the pillow, caught Poirot's eye. It was a note, scrawled in haste. Meet me at dusk, orchard. Trust no one. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but its urgency was clear. Returning to the library, Poirot confronted the group, holding the note aloft. Mies, Amos, Tom was summoned, perhaps coerced. Dr. Hargrove, your concern for Tom seems noble, yet your words betray indifference. Did you know of this meeting? Hargrove's face reddened, his voice rising. I know nothing of notes or orchards. I'm a doctor, not a conspirator. The outburst was a crack in his facade. Poirot's voice was calm but relentless. Your character, doctor, is one of compassion, yet you dismiss a boy's fear. I have learned, through inquiries, that your medical degree is questionable, a correspondence course, not a university. Is this true? The room gasped. Hargrove's hands clenched, his voice a hiss. How dare you? I've helped countless enough, Poirot said, his tone cutting through. A liar's. Mask slips when tested. Your credentials are false, doctor, and your indifference to Tom suggests you know more than you say. Hargrove slumped, his defiance crumbling. Fine, my degree. It's not what I claimed. I studied abroad, but not at a university. I saw Tom leave with that satchel, looking scared. I didn't ask why I didn't care to. Lady Eleanor's voice trembled. You lied about your qualifications. And Tom, what of him? Poirot raised a hand. Tom's fate is unclear, but the doctor's deception is exposed. His character, tested, has revealed its truth. The group dispersed, shaken. Hargrove's exposure resolved the mystery of his false credentials, a satisfying conclusion that restored some clarity. Yet Poirot's mind raced. The note suggested Tom's disappearance was linked to a larger scheme, perhaps tied to the orchard meeting Clara had denied. The true manipulator, orchestrating Blackthorn's lies, remained hidden, their character yet to be tested. Poirot gazed at the mist beyond the window, his moustache curling. The little grey cells, he murmured, they see the cracks in the mask. Chapter 6. The Power of Silence. The late afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting Blackthorn Manor in a twilight glow that softened the edges of its ancient stones. Hercule Poirot stood by the manor's grand staircase, his polished shoes catching the flicker of gaslight. The exposure of Dr. Hargrove's fraudulent credentials had sent ripples of unease through the household. Yet the mystery of young Tom's disappearance, and the note hinting at a secret orchard meeting, deepened the shadow over Blackthorn. Poirot's grey cells churned, sensing the unseen hand behind the manor's discord. Today he would wield his sixth principle. Silence speaks louder than words for a liar. A deceiver, he knew, often used silence to shield their guilt, but their discomfort in quiet moments would betray them. The guests had gathered in the drawing-room for a tense family meeting, called by Lady Eleanor to address the mounting scandals. The room was a cocoon of velvet drapes and polished mahogany, its air heavy with the scent of beeswax and lavender. A portrait of a stern Worthington matriarch glared down from above the mantel. Lady Eleanor stood by the window, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes searching the faces before her. Lord Worthington slouched in an armchair, his face flushed from brandy. Clara Beaumont sat on a settee, her fingers twisting a laced handkerchief. Dr. Hargrove, his confidence shaken, stood stiffly. Avoiding gazers, Mrs. Langley arranged tea trays with mechanical precision, her lips a thin line. Felix Thornton, his sketchbook abandoned, fidgeted with his cufflinks. Mr. Reginald perched on a chair's edge, his eyes half-lidded but alert. Poirot took a central position, his small frame commanding the room. "Mies Amos," he began, his voice soft but piercing. "We are plagued by Shadowstom's absence, lies of credentials, and whispers of secret meetings. Silence, I find, often hides the truth. Let us speak of the stranger seen on the estate grounds last night, near the orchard." A hush fell, thicker than the twilight outside. Lady Eleanor's voice trembled. "A stranger? I've heard no such report, Monsieur Poirot." "Yet the servants whisper," Poirot said, his eyes scanning the room. "A figure in a dark cloak, seen by the groundskeeper at dusk. Who among you knows of this?" Lord Worthington coughed, his words quick. "Nonsense. Probably a poacher. The estate's vast, you know." Felix nodded, his voice eager. "Could be a vagrant. I've seen odd tracks near the woods." Dr. Hargrove adjusted his tie, his tone clipped. "I've no time for strangers. My concern is my work, not rumours." Mrs. Langley's hands paused on a teapot, her voice steady. "I've seen no one, monsieur. The servants would report such a thing." Clara remained silent, her handkerchief twisting tighter, her eyes fixed on the carpet. Mr. Reginald, too, said nothing, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. Poirot's principle rang clear. Silence speaks. Clara's stillness was not composure, but fear, her silence a shield. Reginald's quiet was calculated, his eyes to still. Poirot stepped closer to Clara, his tone gentle. "Mademoiselle Beaumont, you are quiet. The orchard, it holds secrets. Nan, perhaps you saw this stranger." Clara's head snapped up, her voice a whisper. I told you, I was in my room. I know nothing of strangers." Her silence had broken, but its weight lingered. Poirot turned to the group. "Let us test this silence. Each of you, tell me where you were at dusk yesterday, when this stranger was seen." Lord Worthington spoke first, his voice gruff. "In my study, going over accounts." Felix grinned, too quickly. "Painting in the attic. The light's good up there." Dr. Hargrove's tone was sharp. "In the village, visiting a patient." Mrs. Langley's voice was flat. "In the kitchen, preparing for dinner." Mr. Reginald's words were soft. "Reading in my room, A quiet evening. Clara said nothing, her hands trembling. Poirot's gaze locked onto hers. "Mademoiselle, your silence is loud. Where were you at dusk?" Her lips parted, then closed. The room held its breath. Poirot softened his voice. "The truth, mademoiselle, is a kinder burden." Clara's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice barely audible. "I was in the orchard. I met someone, a friend from the village. It was private, monsieur. I didn't want anyone to know." The room erupted in murmurs. Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. "Clara, a secret meeting." "With whom?" Clara's cheeks flushed. "His name is James. He's discreet. We've been meeting quietly. I lied to avoid scandal." Poirot nodded, his expression serene. "And this stranger, mademoiselle, did you see them?" Clara shook her head, her voice steadier. "No, just James. We spoke briefly, then I returned." Before dinner, Poirot's grey cell's word. Clara's confession explained her silence, but the stranger remained a mystery. He turned to the others. "Mise, Amis, Clara's truth lightens the air. But someone else saw this stranger, or perhaps is the stranger. Silence will not protect you." The guests shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke. Poirot noted their reactions. Felix's nervous glance at Clara, Hargrove's tight jaw, Reginald's unmoving stare. Mrs. Langley resumed pouring tea, her hands steady but her eyes darting to the door. The silence was a chorus, each pause a note of guilt or fear to break. The deadlock. Poirot proposed a walk to the orchard, where the stranger was last seen. The group, reluctant but compelled, followed him through the manor's back doors into the twilight. The orchard was a maze of gnarled apple trees, their branches heavy with fruit. The air smelled of earth and cider. Poirot's eyes scanned the ground, finding a crushed cigarette stub, its brand foreign to the manor's stock. He held it up. "This, Mise Amos, is not from Blackthorn. Someone foreign to this house was here. Mademoiselle Clara, is this your James's?" Clara shook her head, her voice firm. "He doesn't smoke." Poirot's gaze swept the group. "Then we have a stranger indeed, and one of you knows more than you say. Silence, it betrays you." Back in the drawing room, Clara's confession hung heavy. Lady Eleanor embraced her. "Niece," her voice soft. "Clara, you should have told me. We'll sort this out." Poirot raised a hand. "The secret meeting is resolved, a small truth won. But the stranger's presence and Tom's absence suggest a deeper game. Silence has spoken, but not all truths are yet revealed." The guests dispersed, Clara's relief tempered by the group's unease. Poirot lingered, the cigarette stub in his pocket. Clara's silence had cracked, revealing a romantic secret, a satisfying resolution to her deception. Yet the stranger's shadow loomed, tied to Tom's disappearance and the manor's lies. The true orchestrator remained hidden, their silence, a fortress yet to be breached. Poirot gazed at the fading orchard, his moustache curling. "The little grey cells," he murmured, "they hear the silence's song." Chapter 7. The web of half-truths. Dawn broke over Blackthorn Manor with a pale, hesitant light filtering through the heavy drapes of the morning room. Hercule Poirot stood by a window, his silhouette sharp against the soft glow, his fingers tracing the rim of a porcelain teacup. Clara Beaumont's confession of her secret orchard meeting with James. The village schoolteacher had lifted a veil of silence, but the mysterious stranger and the missing servant, Tom, cast a persistent shadow over the estate. Poirot's grey cells thrummed with the certainty that these threads were woven by a master deceiver, still hidden among the guests. Today, he would apply his seventh principle: half-truths unravel when facts are cross-checked. A liar, he knew, often blended fact with fiction, but the seams of their deception would split under scrutiny. The guests were summoned for a tour of the manor's grounds, a diversion proposed by Lady Eleanor to ease the mounting tension. The group assembled in the courtyard, where the air carried the scent of damp grass and wood smoke. Lady Eleanor, her shawl drawn tightly, led the way, her voice strained but resolute. Lord Worthington trudged beside her, his face etched with fatigue. Clara, her eyes red-rimmed, walked alone, clutching a parasol. Dr. Hargrove, his confidence frayed, kept pace with a forced smile. Mrs. Langley followed, her black dress stark against the greenery. Felix Thornton, his sketchbook tucked under his arm, scanned the horizon. Mr. Reginald, as ever, trailed behind, his steps measured, his eyes unreadable. As they crossed the lawn toward the stables, a groundskeeper, Mr. Thorne, approached, his cap in hand. His weathered face was tight with worry. "My lady," he said, bowing, "there's trouble. The tool shed was broken into last night. A lock's smashed, and some tools are missing: crowbar, shovel, the like." Lady Eleanor's hand fluttered to her chest. "A break-in, this is intolerable, Monsieur Poirot. First Tom, now this. What is happening to Blackthorn?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, sensing opportunity. "A break-in, Monsieur Thorne. Most curious. Let us examine the shed, and perhaps the truth will emerge." The tool shed, a weathered structure near the orchard, bore signs of violence: a splintered door, a broken lock dangling like a wounded limb. Poirot knelt, inspecting the ground, where muddy boot prints crisscrossed the earth. One print, sharp and distinct, bore a pattern unlike the groundskeeper's heavy boots. He filed it away, turning to Thorne. "Monsieur, you know this estate well. When did you discover this?" Thorne scratched his neck, his voice halting. "This morning, sir, at first light. I was checking the grounds after hearing about that. Stranger in the orchard. Found the door busted, tools gone. Happened after dusk, I'd wager, since I locked up at 6. His words were laced with specifics: time, place, actions yet. Poirot detected a crafted quality, as if Thorne were reciting a tale. His principle stirred, half-truths unravel. He addressed the group. "Mise, amis, a break-in, suggests intent. Who was abroad last night, after dusk?" Lord Worthington snorted. "I was in my study, as I said. No time for sheds." Clara's voice was soft. "I was with James, as I told you, then back in my room." Dr. Hargrove adjusted his glasses. "I was writing letters in the guest wing. Didn't leave." Felix shrugged, his tone light. "Up in the attic, painting. You know me, always chasing light." Mrs. Langley's voice was crisp. "I was with the servants, tidying after dinner." Mr. Reginald's eyes met Poirot's briefly. "In my room, reading. I saw nothing." Thorne, unprompted, added, "I was in my cottage by 7, sir. Didn't see a soul." Poirot's moustache twitched. Thorne's account was too detailed, too eager to establish an alibi. He decided to cross-check. "Monsieur Thorne, you say you locked the shed at 6. Yet the servants report you were seen near the orchard at 7, checking fences. Which is true?" Thorne's face reddened, his words stumbling. "Well, I did check the fences after locking up. Forgot to mention. But I didn't see no break-in." The half-truth was clear. Thorn had blended fact-checking fences with omission his presence near the shed. Poirot pressed further. And these tools, monsieur, were they valuable, or perhaps useful for another purpose? Thorn's eyes darted to the group, then back. Just tools, sir. Nothing special. Maybe a thief wanted M for work. Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but unyielding. Or perhaps to hide something. A crowbar, a shovel, these are tools for digging. Nan, what might one bury or unbury on these grounds? The group tensed, Clara's parasol dipping, Felix's fingers tightening on his sketchbook. Thorn's voice rose, defensive. I ain't hiding nothing. I found the shed like that, I swear. Poirot raised a hand. Calm, monsieur. Let us visit your cottage. Perhaps a clue awaits. In Thorn's small cottage, cluttered with gardening tools and seed packets, Poirot's eyes caught a glint beneath. A benchier crowbar, its edge flecked with fresh earth. He held it up. This, Monsieur Thorn, was not stolen. Why hide it? Thorn's shoulders sagged, his voice low. I took it, sir. Found it in the orchard, near the shed, after the break-in. I panicked, thought I'd be blamed. Someone else broke the lock. I just hid the crowbar to keep out of trouble. Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. You lied, Thorn, to protect yourself. Thorn nodded, his eyes downcast. I'm sorry, my lady. I meant no harm. Poirot's gaze swept the group. A half-truth, mise Amos, is a lie dressed in fact. Monsieur Thorn hid the crowbar, but someone else broke into the shed. Who and why? The guests were silent, but their faces betrayed Enos Clara's flushed cheeks. Felix's averted gaze, Hargrove's tight lips. Poirot's mind raced. The break-in, tied to the stranger and Tom's disappearance, suggested a larger scheme perhaps. Something buried or concealed. Thorn's half-truth had unravelled, a satisfying resolution to the shed mystery. But the orchestrator of Blackthorn's lies remained hidden, their web of deception intact. As the group returned to the manor, Poirot lingered, the crowbar in hand. The little grey cells, he murmured. They see the threads of the web. Chapter 8. The trap of overconfidence. The evening at Blackthorn Manor was awash in the glow of 1,000 candles, their light dancing across the ballroom's gilded walls. Hercule Poirot stood near a marble pillar, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the swirling silks and satins of the guests. The resolution of the tool shed break-in, with Mr. Thorn's half-truth exposed, had brought a temporary reprieve, but the shadow of young Tom's disappearance and the mysterious stranger lingered like a storm cloud. Poirot's grey cells thrummed. With certainty, a master deceiver still wove Blackthorn's web of lies. Tonight he would wield his 8th principle. Overconfidence is a liar's downfall. Those who believed their deceit impenetrable, he knew, often left gaps wide enough for truth to slip through. The ballroom was alive with a grand evening ball. Lady Eleanor's attempt to restore harmony. A quartet played a lively quadrille, and couples spun across the polished floor. Lady Eleanor, resplendent in sapphire velvet, greeted guests with a strained smile. Lord Worthington, his face flushed from wine, clapped backs and laughed too loudly. Clara Beaumont, in a gown of ivory lace, danced with a young lord, her steps precise but her eyes distant. Dr. Hargrove, his composure partially restored, conversed. With minor gentry, his gestures grand. Mrs. Langley moved among the servants, her eyes sharp despite her deferential nod. Felix Thornton, leaning against a wall, sketched the dancers, his expression guarded. Mr. Reginald, in a dark suit, sipped champagne, his gaze sweeping the room. Poirot sipped a glass of mineral water, his eyes cataloguing every detail, the flicker of a fan, the tilt of a head, the pause before a laugh. Lady Eleanor approached, her voice low. "Monsieur Poirot, this ball is a facade. I've heard whispers of another deceptioner, forged document altering the family trust. It surfaced in my study this afternoon, claiming to redirect funds to an unknown beneficiary." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A forged document, madame. This is grave. May I see it?" She led him to a quiet alcove, producing a parchment with the Worthington seal. The handwriting was elegant, but the ink was too fresh, the signature a subtle mismatch. Poirot's principles stirred. Overconfidence leaves cracks. A forger bold enough to tamper with a trust would assume their work flawless, but errors always lingered. Returning to the ballroom, Poirot mingled, his questions light but probing. He approached Lady Eleanor as she rejoined the guests. "Madame, your memory of the trust is renowned. When did you last review its terms?" Lady Eleanor smiled, her voice proud. "Only last week, monsieur. I know every clause by heart. The trust is secure, passed through generations." Her confidence was striking, almost theatrical. Poirot noted it, then joined Lord Worthington, who was boasting about a hunting trip. "Monsieur, the family trust must be a great responsibility. Have you inspected it recently?" Worthington waved a hand, his voice hearty. "Eleanor handles that. I trust her implicitly." Clara, overhearing, added softly, "Aunt Eleanor's meticulous. She'd never miss a detail." Dr. Hargrove, nearby, nodded. "A fine legacy. I've seen trusts mismanaged, but not here." Felix grinned, his sketch pausing. "Sounds dull. I'd rather paint than fuss over papers." Mrs. Langley, serving drinks, said nothing, her face impassive. Mr. Reginald's voice was low. "A trust is only as strong as its keeper." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Lady Eleanor's assurance stood out, her pride a potential veil for error or deceit. He decided to test her. "Madame," he said, drawing her aside as the music swelled, "this document claims a change to the trust, benefiting a new party. Your memory is impeccable, Can. You confirm the original terms." Lady Eleanor's smile tightened, her voice firm. "The trust benefits my children and Clara, with provisions for the estate." No changes were made. Poirot held up the forged document. "Yet this bears your seal, madame, and a signature resembling yours. How can this be?" Her eyes widened, her words quick. "It's a fraud. I've never seen this document. My signature is flawless, unmistakable." The overconfidence was palpable. Poirot pressed gently. "And yet, madame, the ink is fresh, the seal precise. When did you last use your seal?" Lady Eleanor hesitated, her voice faltering. "Yesterday, in my study, but I locked it away. Number one could access it." Poirot's principle rang true. Overconfidence is a liar's downfall. He addressed the guests, his voice carrying over the music. "Mise amis, a forged document threatens Blackthorn's legacy. Someone believed their work perfect, but perfection is a myth. Madame, let us visit your study." In the study, a mahogany desk stood beneath a portrait of a Worthington patriarch. Lady Eleanor opened a drawer, revealing her Sealander ledger, showing recent withdrawals from the trust, unmarked in the official records. Poirot's voice was soft but relentless. "Madame, these withdrawals suggest manipulation. Your confidence in the trust's security, perhaps, it was misplaced." Lady Eleanor's face paled, her voice trembling. I made those withdrawals, monsieur, to cover debts from Edward's failed ventures. I meant to replace the funds, to protect the family. I forged the document to mislead creditors, not to steal. The guests gathered at the study door gasped. Lord Worthington's voice was hoarse. Eleanor, you risked everything. Poirot raised a hand. Madame, your candour saves further harm. The forgery is exposed, the trust preserved. Lady Eleanor sank into a chair, tears in her eyes. I only wanted to save Blackthorn. The ball resumed, but the mood was sombre. Poirot stepped onto the balcony, the night air cool against his face. Lady Eleanor's overconfidence had led to her downfall, a satisfying resolution to the forged document mystery. Yet the stranger, Tom's disappearance, and the shed break-in pointed to a deeper scheme. The true orchestrator, their lies more cunning, remained at large, their confidence yet to be tested. Poirot gazed at the starry sky, his moustache curling. The little grey cells, he murmured. They see the cracks in the boldest facade. Chapter 9. The puppet master's strings. The moon hung low over Blackthorn Manor, its silver light seeping through the study's tall windows, casting long shadows across the room's polished floors. Hercule Poirot stood by a bookshelf, his gloved fingers tracing the spine of a leather-bound volume, his mind alight with the threads of deception he had unravelled. Lady Eleanor's confession of forging the trust document had exposed her overconfidence. Yet the deeper mystery, the missing servant Tom, the stranger in the orchard, the broken shed, pointed to a mastermind orchestrating the manor's discord. Tonight, Poirot would wield his ninth principle. A liar's influence is revealed by the patterns of others' deceit. The true deceiver, he knew, pulled strings from the shadows, their presence betrayed by the lies they inspired. The guests had gathered in the study for a late-night confrontation, summoned by Poirot after a day of whispered suspicions. The room was heavy with tension, its air thick with the scent of old books and wax. A single candelabrum flickered on the desk, illuminating faces etched with unease. Lady Eleanor sat rigidly, her hands folded, her eyes haunted by her recent confession. Lord Worthington paced, his steps uneven, his face flushed with frustration. Clara Beaumont, her shawl drawn tight, stared at the floor, her fingers still. Dr. Hargrove leaned against a bookcase, his jaw tight, his earlier arrogance dimmed. Mrs. Langley stood by the door, her posture stiff, her eyes darting to the shadows. Felix Thornton slouched in a chair, his sketchbook forgotten, his gaze flickering nervously. Mr. Reginald, the quiet cousin, sat in a corner, his thin fingers steepled, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. Poirot stepped into the circle of light, his voice calm but commanding. Mes amis, Blackthorn is a stage, and we are players in a drama of lies. Each deception, Clara's secret, Felix's letter, Worthington's ventures, Hargrove's credentials, Thorn's half-truth, Eleanor's forgery points to a pattern. Someone weaves these lies, pulling strings to sow discord. Tonight, we cut those strings. Lady Eleanor's voice trembled. Monsieur Poirot, surely we've uncovered enough. The trust is safe. Tom's absence is being searched. Nan, Madame Poirot interrupted, his tone firm. Tom's disappearance, the stranger, the shed, these are not accidents. They are threads in a web, spun by one among us. The room stilled, eyes darting. Poirot's principle guided him. A liar's influence is revealed by patterns. He had observed the guests' reactions, their subtle exchanges of glance between Felix and Clara, Hargrove's stiff nod to Mrs. Langley, Reginald's unwavering calm. The quiet cousin intrigued him most. His silence was not fear, but strategy, his presence a shadow over every deception. Poirot began, his voice soft but piercing. Let us review. Each lie served a purpose, distraction, concealment, gain. But whose gain? Monsieur Reginald, you are quiet, yet your eyes miss nothing. What do you see in this web? Reginald's lips curved slightly, his voice low. I see a house in turmoil, monsieur, but I am merely a guest, observing. His calm was too perfect, his words too measured. Poirot pressed. And yet, monsieur, you were in the library when Tom vanished, near the orchard when the stranger appeared, in the study when the trust was forged. A curious coincidence, Nan. Reginald's fingers twitched, but his smile held. Coincidence, perhaps. I keep to myself, monsieur. Poirot turned to the group. Let us test this pattern. Each of you recall a moment when Monsieur Reginald spoke to you privately this week. What did he say? Clara hesitated, her voice soft. He asked about my plans after Blackthorn. Said I should secure my future. Felix nodded, his tone uneasy. He suggested I sell my paintings to a London dealer he knew. Said it'd clear my debts. Dr. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. He mentioned a medical conference, offered to introduce me to sponsors. Mrs. Langley's voice was flat. He asked about the manor's finances, said he was curious about its upkeep. Lord Worthington frowned. He warned me about risky investments, suggested I diversify. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. He spoke of the trust, said it needed stronger safeguards. Poirot's grey cells sparked. Reginald's conversations, subtle and scattered, had planted seeds doubt, ambition, for rich nudging the guests toward their lies. His principle held, the liar's influence. He stepped closer to Reginald, his voice a blade. Monsieur, you are no mere observer. You whispered to Clara of security, pushing her to secrecy. To Felix, of money, prompting his letter. To Hargrove, of ambition, hiding his fraud. To Thorn, of loyalty, hiding the crowbar. To Eleanor, of protection, leading to forgery. You are the puppet master. Reginald's smile faded, his eyes cold. You accuse without proof, monsieur. I only offered advice. Poirot held up a letter found in Reginald's room during a discreet search. This, monsieur, is your draft of Felix's blackmail letter in your hand. You guided his pen, Nan, and Tom's note, urging a meeting you wrote it, to lure him away. The room gasped. Reginald's composure cracked, his voice sharp. Preposterous. I'm a guest, not a villain. Poirot's tone was relentless. You sought to destabilize Blackthorn, to seize control of the trust. Your whispers fueled every lie, but patterns betray you. Reginald stood, his face pale. You can't prove this. I enough, Poirot said, producing a ledger. From Reginald's belongings, showing coded payments to a village accomplice, the stranger. Your scheme unravels, monsieur. Reginald slumped, his voice a whisper. I wanted influence, not ruin. The trust, it was my chance. Lady Eleanor's voice was ice. Reginald, you betrayed us all. Poirot raised a hand. The puppet master is exposed, his strings cut. Tom's fate remains, but the web is broken. The guests dispersed, shaken but relieved. Reginald's scheme, a satisfying resolution, restored clarity. Yet Tom's absence and the stranger's role lingered, setting the stage for Poirot. Final revelation. Poirot gazed at the moonlit shelves, his moustache curling. "The little grey cells," he murmured, "they see the puppeteer's hand." Chapter 10. The Truth Unveiled. The grand drawing-room of Blackthorn Manor glowed under the soft light of crystal chandeliers, their prisms scattering rainbows across the damask walls. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's centre, his small frame a beacon of authority amidst the gathered guests. The unmasking of Mr. Reginald's manipulative scheme had severed the strings of deceit that had plagued the manor. Yet the final threads, young Tom's disappearance and the stranger's presence, remained unresolved. Tonight, Poirot would wield his 10th and final principle: truth triumphs when lies are confronted with clarity. With every deception laid bare, the mastermind's plot would collapse, restoring harmony to Blackthorn. The guests sat in a semicircle, their faces a gallery of anticipation and dread. Lady Eleanor, her hands clasped tightly, sat beside Lord Worthington, whose eyes were heavy with remorse. Clara Beaumont, her composure restored, held a cup of tea, her gaze steady. Dr. Hargrove, his arrogance stripped, leaned forward, his fingers twitching. Mrs. Langley stood by the tea trolley, her expression unreadable, but her hands still. Felix Thornton, his sketchbook absent, sat upright, his eyes clear for the first time. Mr. Reginald, now exposed, sat apart, his face pale, his hands cuffed by a discreet constable summoned from the village. Outside, the night was still, the moon casting a serene glow over the estate. Poirot began, his voice resonant yet calm. "Mes amis, we have unravelled a tapestry of lies. Clara's secret meetings, Felix's blackmail, Worthington's ventures, Hargrove's credentials, Thorn's half-truth, Eleanor's forgery, and Reginald's machinations. Each was a thread, woven by a single hand to destabilize Blackthorn and seize its wealth. Tonight, we end this drama with truth." Lady Eleanor's voice was soft. "Monsieur Poirot, you've exposed so much, but Tom, where is he? And the stranger?" Poirot raised a hand, his eyes gleaming. "Patience, madame. The truth is a mosaic, complete only when every piece is placed. Let us begin with Tom." He turned to the group, his gaze sweeping each face. Tom's disappearance was no accident. His note urging a meeting in the orchard was penned by Monsieur Reginald, as we discovered. But why? To remove a witness, perhaps, or to create chaos. I have learned, through the village constable, that Tom was found this morning, unharmed, in a barn near the village. He fled, frightened by threats from a stranger, the same stranger seen in the orchard. The guests murmured, relief mingling with curiosity. Clara's voice trembled. "Tom's safe." "Thank heavens," Poirot nodded. "Oui, mademoiselle, but the stranger's identity is key. The cigarette stub from the orchard, the broken shed, the forged document all point to an accomplice, hired by Reginald to execute his plan." He produced the ledger from Reginald's room, its coded entries now deciphered. These payments, mes amis, were to a man named Victor Crane, a village rogue known for petty crimes. Crane was the stranger, paid to intimidate Tom, break into the shed, and plant the forged document. Reginald's goal was to sow discord, weaken the Worthingtons, and position himself to control the trust. Reginald's voice was a hiss. "You have no proof, Poirot. Mere speculation." Poirot's smile was serene. "Non, monsieur. The constable has Crane in custody," he confessed, naming you as his employer. Your lies, Clara's secrecy, Felix's letter, Eleanor's forgery, were sparks to ignite chaos, all to your benefit. He turned to the group, his voice rising. Each lie was a step in Reginald's dance. Clara's silence, prompted by your whispers of scandal. Felix's letter, drafted by your hand. Worthington's ventures, nudged by your advice. Hargrove's fraud, shielded by your encouragement. Thorne's hidden crowbar, a task you set to cover Crane's tracks. Eleanor's forgery, inspired by your hints of financial ruin. But clarity, mise amis, cuts through deception. Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind him. The cigarette stub, foreign to Blackthorne, was Crane's. The shed's boot print matched. His boots, found in his lodgings. Tom's note, in your handwriting, Reginald, lured him to the orchard, where Crane threatened him. The forged document, with its fresh ink, was placed by Crane under your orders. Each lie, confronted with facts, crumbles. Lady Eleanor's eyes brimmed with tears. Reginald, why? You were family. Reginald's face twisted, his voice low. Family? I was a distant cousin, ignored, penniless. The trust should have been mine. I only wanted what I deserved. Poirot's tone softened. Your ambition, monsieur, blinded you. Truth has triumphed. The constable stepped forward, leading Reginald away. The guests sat in stunned silence, the weight of resolution settling over them. Lady Eleanor rose, her voice steady. Monsieur Poirot, you've saved Blackthorne. How can we thank you? Poirot bowed, his moustache curling. Madame, the truth is my reward. Blackthorne is yours, again guard it well. As the guests dispersed, Clara embraced Lady Eleanor. Felix offered a quiet apology, and Hargrove vowed to make amends. Mrs. Langley resumed her duties, her eyes softened with relief. Lord Worthington clasped Poirot's hand, his voice gruff. You've given us a second chance, Poirot. Alone in the drawing room, Poirot gazed at the chandelier, its light a symbol of clarity. Every lie had been confronted, every thread tied. Tom was safe, the stranger unmasked, the trust secure. The mastermind, Reginald, was defeated, his scheme laid bare by Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth. Blackthorne Manor stood whole, its harmony restored. Poirot stepped onto the balcony, the night air cool against his face. The little grey cells, he murmured, they bring light to the darkest corners.